Hello, it's Jason here with a special episode for you today. I'm talking with my good friend, Johnny Hamil, who I've had on the podcast before, spent some great times with him over the years, and he is doing a super cool event that I want to let you know about. We had a great chat, so I'm going to get into that here in a second, but I want to get this out quick because the event is Bassists for Bassists, July 7th through the 11th. And so we talk all about that, what Johnny's been up to, and yeah, it's super interesting stuff. The website, I will link up to that in the show notes, but it's kcbassworkshop.com. And before we get rolling here, I'm going to play a clip from their promo, which features John Clayton, Lynn Seaton, and Sturm playing Summertime. So I really hope you enjoy that. Thank you for listening. Thank you to everybody who helps me out with this podcast, and definitely check out this event if you can. I'm going to be there. I hope to see you there as well.
A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm just hanging out and practicing bass and planting some stuff in the garden and probably, that kind of business.
Yeah, I know. That's always nice. So your pandemic, your garden's probably amazing because you have you've been doing it since March then, huh?
Oh, Johnny, it is hilarious. So we moved in here. We closed on this place like 6 days before San Francisco totally shut down. So we had,
Oh, really?
And so I'm staring out this window. There was not one plant out here when this pandemic hit. I have planted from seed and grown tomato plants that now have tomatoes on them. That's how long we've been like in so it's I mean, it's not hilarious, but it's it's just like it's pretty wild. So
it's been amazing. I don't know if you know, but me and Jeff Harshbarger, a bass player from Kansas City, we were in Paris. I was recording my solo bass CD there and studying with Rabbath, and I go every year, and it just got crazy. It was totally fine, and Jeff had planned to go to Paris for to study for like a month with Francois. And he called me like the week I was there already. I was like, everything's fine. What are you, crazy? You're not going to come to Paris. You've been planning this trip for like a year, finally taking off time to really go and restudy. And of course, Paris is just a luxury for all of us,
Yeah.
And my foot was in my mouth, and I'm totally scarred because, it just hit Paris so hard. And Paris was shut down. We got the last flight out of there, or we would still be there.
Whoa.
We would be stuck there.
Really?
So, yeah.
Oh, man.
We did. So Harshbarger was quarantined here with me for the first, Kansas City was not really on lockdown when we got back. It was fine. So I think that was like middle of March. And so we had to self-quarantine ourselves because we were in Paris, where the virus was more, and so he actually took over in the studio because obviously I wasn't teaching any kids in the live, so the studio worked as a nice little his own apartment for a while, and so he stayed here for I think about 30 days, and we did a couple of duet concerts which were really nice. They're up online, so you can check them out if you want.
I will check them out. I missed those on the social feeds as they were.
They did like the news. They did a whole story about us, coming out of Paris and everything. So there's actually a whole radio broadcast of it. So
what?
I need to link it on it's on my Facebook page for sure, but I need to put it up on the KC Bass Workshop
Oh man. Okay.
It's really cool. It's fun because me and Jeff go way back, so we did all kinds of stuff. He's definitely more of a jazzer than I am, but we did some Rabbath pieces because he was getting ready to study some with Francois, and he's such a great improviser that we just jammed a lot. He actually recorded a couple things on my solo bass thing because he's a great singer, so I put him in the vocal booth and made him sing a little. And it's really cool. I need to send you that track. It's really great. At the end, it's so my solo bass thing is just all video game music.
Yep.
So it's my you've seen me do that.
I love it. I've got John. I got multiple copies of the CD with the different artwork and everything.
Yeah,
and
cool. Yeah. So it's that one. It's almost done. The pandemic actually stopped. It's like two tracks from being mixed, or the video game would finally be done. That part is definitely frustrating for me that it's not done. This last track, there's a thing that happens in Paris when you're hanging out with Sylvain. I call him Sly Rabbath, who is the pianist that Francois' son. He's an amazing keyboard player, but he has this great collection of vintage keyboards, and so we've been making this kind of, we both like, it's more like a rock composition where I'm a rock musician, so I've always written with people where like, here's my part, why don't you think about putting that on? And we just have so much fun creating it in the studio like that. It's really cool. Wow. So when you go to his studio, he owns a car in Paris, but it's much easier to get around on a scooter. And Sly's born and raised in Paris, and it's the most frightening thing you ever did is get on the back of a scooter with him. So I call it the Parisian scooter death ride to get to the studio. You're just hanging on for dear life, and he's going in between cars, and he's screaming things out because he basically tells you later, he's like, yeah, if they take a left turn, we're dead, like if they don't hear you, coming. So he's like, ah! And so he's screaming, and the people in the car are screaming back. It's a really unique experience that maybe like bungee jumping. It's a certain death level there. So I think you're almost safe. He's pretty good at it, but
wow, that's crazy.
As his mother said, she was like, no, I don't think you should ever get on that scooter ever with him.
Oh man, I'm so glad you got out of Paris on that last flight. That's crazy. My last flight I think was March 3rd or something like that. But I mean, it was like a totally normal flight. I was coming from I wasn't coming from Paris. I was coming from Pittsburgh, but I was in Europe not just like a few weeks before that, and it was like totally normal.
It seemed fine, right?
Yeah,
it was fine, and then all of a sudden, boom. And of course, France lost like 30,000. So it's hit more like
like
New
Italy.
York. I'm sorry, I actually don't know how bad was it in San Fran. I know LA was not so good, but
San Francisco, the Bay Area was remarkably early. I think we were the first place to totally shut everything down. And so what was projected and what happened, it's like, I don't remember what the exact numbers are, but I think it's a couple, I'm probably getting this wrong, but it's in the low thousands, maybe like 2,000 or something instead of like 80,000 or whatever they were predicting. Cause, but it's we're all shut down like this. So it's a similar feeling.
Kansas City is, it was nice. I mean, we were obviously quarantined, so we were in our house, but like all of our friends could just go to the store and like, they would drop off like too much groceries. Like I would never get that many groceries ever, like we're just like, how are we gonna eat all this? So we were eating like kings, when Jeff was here, and like it was pretty extraordinary time. It's kind of fun, I was in my own house, so I could go out and do yard work because we have a nice big yard like what your garden is, and far enough that my neighbors, we wouldn't. I don't think we can expose ourselves even if we could, So it was nice being back. And Kansas City, like the numbers, I think we only have like 200-300 people deaths in Kansas or something. So feel very lucky anyway. I don't, obviously knock on wood that everybody's done. But I tell my neighbors who are definitely more like, come on, it's time to get back to normal. And I'm like, I'm scarred from Paris, like I'm still a little nervous about getting back to normal. I'm gonna wear a mask. I'm gonna not go places if I don't have to, and I don't. I think some of my neighbors are just like, and maybe they're right because of Kansas City, but man, it's just. Yeah. That leaving Paris was really kind of that horror story because, basically the week before it closed down, we celebrated Francois' 89th birthday, and in that room, just all the people that I love, were there. Like it was a room. It's always a great time to be in that room. I'll just treasure those moments for the rest of my life. And of course, Francois, I know that you know him personally too, that he's just one of those great human beings in life. So he's obviously my hero on the bass, but he's also my hero as just a person, Yeah. He's just a really, really, really incredibly nice person. He's a true miracle at 89. He's not slowing down. He's crazy. And always doing things that just impress you. And but when I left there, and I was thinking, if I had the virus and I passed it on to him, like that really starts to get into your brain, and then all of a sudden you get you sneeze or something, and it was very psychological those last couple of days because I was just so worried that maybe I had it, but I didn't. Talk about one of those big horror movies that you ever, if you were you were the reason that something like that horribly tragic would happen. I don't know if I could go on.
I know. Well, I went like a lot of people. I started watching all these like pandemic and shows like that when this all broke down. And then I was like, all right, I cannot. I go and like I think I watched The Walking Dead. And I was just like I went down this dark hole of disaster stuff. And I'm realizing I love living in San Francisco. And I've lived in big cities for a while, but I'm sort of wishing I had more of a suburban setup these days. At least we have the outdoor space, so that's something. But like, man, looking at the people in Italy that couldn't even like go out on their balcony if they had it, or to, leave the place. In Paris, I know it was like that, right? You couldn't even leave your place without written permission or something.
Yeah, well, I think Francois could leave and go get groceries, but basically he'd have to say, I lived there. A cop would ask him, like not wait till you did something wrong, but basically like, So I mean, and Francois really didn't. I think he went out once or twice because he's in that age group too. Yeah. So he was a little worried about that. But Sylvain is younger, so he would do those things. And definitely we would have been stuck in an Airbnb, which is obviously would have been a financial disaster because how much those cost compared to just your house, so. Oh man, it would have been rough if we were still there.
I'm so glad you made it back, and you don't do anything small, man. It's great. It's really wild to see what you've built that's coming up. It's really cool.
Well, I'm glad we talked about that, the pandemic and that story, because what happened was I said this to somebody the other day that basically we're all in the same boat. The world has given us some lemons, like it's tough times, and that's just the way Mother Nature works, I think. But what's happening to me is so extraordinary. I'm so inspired. So we're making lemonade out of those lemons for sure. Because once I came back, I just started teaching online. Which is something I do when there was a snow day in Kansas City for the last couple of years. So I knew it wasn't exactly totally new, but I have never done it to that degree, And what I was really surprised, just last year, I got a new laptop and a new iPhone, I was really surprised about how clear everything was. Like, this is much more clearer than, in 2 years ago. I'm sure it was just my old device, you know what I mean? But, or I don't know if the internet's faster now or I don't, but
Yeah.
man, it was great.
Well, I think we've come a long way, and Kansas City, this is a random fact that many people in the world probably don't know, but Kansas City has been particularly ahead of the game in terms of their connectivity. I know that Google rolled out a network, and I think just in
Google Fiber City, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if you have that or not, but I've just heard that, and really, like, because I've taught lessons off and on online for probably a decade, and it has definitely. I mean, people are complaining now when I hearing from people, if they don't have the right device or whatever. Oh my goodness, try doing it 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's what I mean. Like 2 years ago, like I said, I do a day or two of snow day lessons online, and occasionally I would have somebody from out of, a student of mine would move away and they didn't want to find a new teacher because they're young and they wanted to. So I would have a couple like that a week or something. But, most of the time of those lessons, I would still be like, you need to find a teacher in person because, nothing's going to replace that in-person thing. And of course, teaching my age group, the younger they are, the harder it is to do online. Yeah. Like you teach a 3-year-old, good luck. I mean, it's been an interesting learning curve there for a regular weekly lesson. So I just didn't want to stop totally because that would be a disaster. You come back after 5 months of whatever we're going to have to do, and you would be looking at that kid and they'd be playing violin or guitar or something else. They wouldn't be playing bass anymore. That's for sure. So but the main thing about teaching all the time was for me that it started to get into this idea of, I am a very good teacher. I think about the learning process and we all have our tricks, our teacher tricks, but how they work better, how you change what you're asking, the parameters of what you're asking for each week, because it just, you realize that some things, aren't going to translate in the virtual lesson. So obviously you can't play simultaneously at all. So you can't play duets with anyone, or at least I haven't done that very well.
It really makes me realize how much I have relied on the ability to do that.
Right, exactly.
In my life, like whether it's teaching bass or teaching orchestra or whatever, like it just totally changes that's a major difference, I think.
It's huge. And the other thing is visual tracking for the students, like that actually can still work, so that's the Suzuki thing of why everybody plays in unison, is so that you can visually track the bow arm so that they're learning it more like kicking a ball or throwing something, like that idea is, you could still do it. And at first I thought I couldn't, because when you would play there was the time delay, right? But I learned if you just mute all the other students, you could play in unison just fine. You don't have that problem. They're still tracking. It's not the way it would normally go. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter if they're 2 seconds behind you if you can't hear the time delay. So that was one of those things I went, great, that's awesome. The second thing that I realized was that if I have the kids start sending me videos before their lessons, so much better. Because as any good young bass teacher would know, one of the things that like Dr. Suzuki did was always they would mail them their tapes back then, and he would listen to them and give comments and mail the tapes off. I don't know if you know that, Jason, but I just went to
Wow.
Matsumoto, he would wake up at 3 a.m. and review his international students. So he had been teaching online for back in the, 60s or something. And he would get up at 3 and review all those tapes that he would have. So he would have 20 tapes in the morning before his real students showed up to his house.
Wow.
I was so inspired. You got to go to Matsumoto and go to his house. It's still there. It's a museum. It only takes about, half a day to go through. It's not that big of a deal, but it's inspiring, man. It's really cool.
Wow.
So what I found was, the kids love YouTube, right? They love it. So now all my students are making their own YouTube pages, and they're putting up their videos. And what's happening is they're still working, it's like their work videos, of course, but I all of a sudden we're like, oh, this was how you played it 2 weeks ago. This was last week. This is this week. Can you hear that progress? And they just get excited about it, and like we all do when we finally get something, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the most beautiful things about learning a string instrument is realizing that you used to not be able to do that, and now you can play that. Oh, you could see it in their eyes and ears. So for me, my students went nuts. I was at first so disheartened that I had to do this all the time online, but I saw that all of my students just went into their instrument because it was the most normal thing they had. You know what I mean? The first, when I was first here, they actually didn't have school. They didn't have, the online school didn't take up. So they had all day to practice. I didn't have to compete with sports. They were just they're flying through things naturally going through, most of them take a year to get through a George Vance book or so, normal, I think. But man, they were just I know the whole book. And you're like, really? Because they're practicing like crazy. And so I really love the fact that the system that George put together, and of course all the bass books that are out there. I don't just use the George Vance books, but that's my primary thing for the beginners. And then Francois' books, and I have my jazz books, and they'll just go through them all, and they're just playing in their room with the they got the play-alongs and stuff like that, and they're making videos, and it's so cool, man. I'm just so inspired by them, and they're coming to eventually after about 3 weeks, I started the idea. I was getting more a hang of the thing, so I tried the group classes, and that's when it really took off, because then they saw their fellow bass players coming together, and you could see it on their faces that we all miss seeing each other. We all miss having interaction. We're just, the isolation is tough, and so they're just there, and they were just so excited. So that was all those things were going really well, and this was probably about 1 month of teaching. So maybe April 15th, I decided to, I was talking to Francois, who was really actually quite, he was concerned about his age, being in Paris. We would talk about those things, and he was, he didn't feel he was feeling the pressures that we all have. It's ugly out there. And I said, man, we need to would you want to just come to one of these group classes? You'll see the kids. I was talking to him about this. He was like, oh yeah, I would love that. So we set, I had to do it at noon from the time change. Usually my group classes are in the evening. And so that one was the one. That was the reason why I decided to do my event that is coming up here, because I decided, okay, everybody loves Francois, and he's been so generous to everyone that I just invited almost 200 people. And, so I have this Zoom account here, and I was also just seeing how many people can we fit in Zoom before it crashes. And it was so great. That was such a wonderful class because it started with just me and Francois, and I was talking to him about, fixing the audio. I think you know how to do that. You got to go into the audio settings, and then the bass sounds a little bit better. Still not the best, but it's still it's much better than if it's off.
Right.
And then we were doing sound check, and then one by one, people started coming to class. It was so cool. And then all of a sudden there was a moment where it just went boop 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 boop, boop, and there was like 100 people in the thing, and it was so cool because then it was just like, whoa, it was like so exciting. The virtual classroom. That's and he looked at me at that moment and he said, yes, we're going to do this event, which became so he said that right then. He said, I get it now. I think we can do that. This is teaching. This is providing that whole that's missing from us. We all love our base camps in the summer. Well, you know it.
Oh yeah.
You see it in the kids. They show up every year. We now have the Ted Botsfords and the Ninas and the Sean Conlings that all grew up in those things, that's has a lot to do with Francois and Barry Green and ISB and all of our heroes. Like they set it down, and now we have all these great camps across the country that are just awesome. The Golden Gate, Los Angeles based.
You're such a huge part of that, man. You're an inspiration. You have and motivator for so many people. Celito and her camp.
Well, that's just because, as you know, George was my motivator, and he's not around to talk about it, so I have to. But anyway, Francois was like, "This is so much." I mean, you could see it on his face that he needed that class just as much as the rest of us do. And that's what I was telling him. And of course, this already, because you've seen it in your students and your events, and you get this, if the event wasn't there, and trust me, I would have preferred to take a summer off. It would be really nice. Well, you know what I mean. You've helped program that stuff. It's a lot of work. And, but that whole that would be missing with just taking the summer off with no base camp at all. Oh, it'd be a hole in my heart. And he just looked at me and he said, I do not want any money for this. I just want it to happen. And that was his words. And I was just so taken by that, and I was so excited. I was like, yeah, I mean, I've been teaching online since I got back, and in fact I've more students right now just because they're easier to get in your schedule, because it's just you don't have to have people travel, like it's kind of easier to sometimes I have too many students right now, but it's so I was like, I don't need any money, and I knew, and me and Francois both know, there were many of our colleagues and friends who are not in that situation. They are in tough times. And so I said, great, let's have a benefit. Let's do a benefit. So we're calling it Bassists for Bassists, and we're basically the tuition is actually free, but we're asking for donations. So normally to go to the camp, it's for Kansas City it was $600. So we're saying it's online, so $300 maybe to come to the same camp. I know it's all online, and that's not as cool as being in person. Never will be. But man, it's still gonna be extraordinary, as you know, because you're my hero too, because you're getting ready to do the Bass Summit, which I'm totally excited about. It's like we have an ISB again. We just had one last year, and now we're having another one.
Yeah, that Bass Summit, it's funny. That was like Barry Green's Ohio State University Bass Camp that then metamorphosized into a bass convention.
Well, and when I Francois was like, Barry's having this thing too, and I was like, great. and it was actually the date of the Kansas City bass workshop. So I moved the basis for basses out of the thing, and I was like, everyone from Kansas City Bass is going to the Bass Summit, and it was like we have two bass events, which is going to be really great. And originally I was like, great, we can all just go there, and Jason and Barry can do all the work, and we're going to have our own Bass Summit. And then, but I did look into it, and I said, and this was coming from two of my parents. They said, this looks great, John, but this looks like the professional ISB. Doesn't look like there's any room for our kids. You know, like what are they going to do?
Right. What you're doing is much more educationally, and not that the Bass Summit isn't educationally oriented, but you're like we've both been to a lot of bass camps, and though I haven't been to yours yet, but I will.
Yeah, you better.
It's going to happen. But
you need Kansas City barbecue.
Oh, please! The one in, so I've only been to one Kansas City barbecue place. It was in Kansas City, Kansas, and it was in a gas station, and I forget.
Oh yeah, that's we used to call it Oklahoma Joe's, but now they just call it Joe's. I don't know why they changed it.
That's the only Kansas City barbecue I've had, but I need much more. And I'm a barbecue fan, and though San Francisco is known for many things, barbecue is not one of them.
I don't eat barbecue when I'm in San Francisco. I'm going to go right for the fish.
Yeah. But yeah, the or like what happens at the Golden Gate Base Camp, where it's and then I love how enmeshed in the Rabbath Vance, just teaching orientation. You're like, obviously what you're doing is going to be, so it's a different kind of thing, and it's something that people need, and great model too, to make it like that, a pay what you can kind of model is really good.
Because some of the bass players, some of my families are out of work too, so it's the worst time to look at them and like, now I got to send my kid off to summer school and pay all the fees. It's for them. Mm-hmm. So if they want to come, Kansas City, I'm quite proud of the fact that Kansas City is a charity organization. I've turned my bass workshop into a charity, because every year we try to raise up money so that any kid that can't swing the tuition, we can cover the costs for them, and we give them scholarships, which is very important, because as you know, bass players come from all walks of life, all different economics backgrounds, so it's tough for some parents, and I hate it when some parent says, no, I don't want them to play that instrument because it's going to cost too much or something like that. That is the worst. That's the worst feeling inside of me ever. So this is kind of doing that thing, which is great. The other, that just the idea of people, I've been getting donations from all over the world, man. It's been crazy. Like just people sending me money for the bass players.
Wow.
So that's really important. One of the things I'm excited about this podcast is that really, if you could send the word out, I don't know every bass player, I like to think I do, but of course I don't. And it's a very personal thing that I'm a very proud person. If I was in a situation where I needed some money, I probably wouldn't ask for it. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopefully sending the message out that if there's anyone out there that knows somebody that needs a little help, you just tell them to contact me, and we'll try to get them on the roster.
That's great. That's great. You're such a good role model, man. In terms of like somebody, I've thought this for years, but like what you, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but you're a humble guy too, so you probably don't like to, but like it's just incredible what the musical world that you've kind of built, and that how many people it's inspired and impacted, and even someone who's looking to like, and again, we're in a really weird time right now for anybody who's thinking about their career, but I knew you would like, you just hit, like, as you're talking through what you're doing online, all the positives of this kind of thing. Being able to reach out to Francois thousands of miles away and using the asynchronous learning, which you're right, people have been doing that for half a century. It's hilarious that but it's just great. So I mean, like, it was so cool to see this, and I wasn't totally surprised that you would have something big in store, but it's really exciting.
Well, and that, and the other thing that I'm really excited about, is more of these people. Like, I say this to people, like, obviously Francois has been a big influence on me, because and I didn't know that when I first met him. I was just really more interested in what George Vance was doing. As you know, I just thought it was really cool that this guy was teaching the largest instrument to the smallest kid. Yeah. I just went right to him, and it changed my life. I mean, I wasn't going to teach little kids how to play the upright bass. I was a bass player. I was gonna play gigs till the rest of my life. And then I met that, and it changed my life. And then I, of course, went to his camp, and so I met George at ISB. And then I went to George's camp, and I do think that, I'm very honored that you say my camp has inspired so many people, but, I think that I basically took what I liked about ISB and what I liked about George's camp, and I made that. Mm-hmm. And that was because George was asking me to do that. And so the whole time, like, when I was the first time I met Victor Wooten, he was talking to me about teaching bass, and I'm a rock musician first. I think you know that, Jason. I started playing rock music, electric bass, and then I got into classical once I got older, and jazz. And Victor looked at me and he said, "Man, your bass workshop where's the electric bass?" And I went, "Oh, dagger in my heart," I was like, you're Vic, you're right. If you look at my website, does it look like it's welcome mat for electric bass players? And of course, he's so great at that ambassador to that. So the last 4 years since we had that conversation, me and Vic, I've really made it adamant to get more electric bass players in Kansas City, and always hire great electric bass teachers. So this year, I'm really stoked about this. Like, one of my heroes, because I'm a metalhead, is Billy Sheehan's coming, and he's one of those guys that's just like, he doesn't fit into any mold, like, he's a rock and roller. He just plays, and he's virtuosic. Like, just go try to play one of his songs. Good luck, your hands are going to be bleeding. And he's so great and so creative. Obviously, in all the great rock and roll bands, he's going to be he should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He's not already. I haven't checked on that, but a legend. And he's just cool enough that I was just like, "I'm doing this thing. Do you want to come?" And he was like, "Yeah."
Wow.
And the same thing when I just emailed John Clayton, who, we've talked about him coming to Kansas City for a long time. He's one of my heroes as far as what he does in jazz teaching for kids. I don't know if I'm sure you've watched him with kids. Yeah. But he's said so many great things about teaching jazz to all levels. Like, he's to me, such a great ambassador in that market. So he's coming, and Lynn Seaton was coming anyway, but those two guys are forming this advanced core workshop, because as we know, that there's also that idea that there's so many. I think the jazz, or the independent gigging musicians, which are a lot of jazz musicians, are really hit hard because all the nightclubs are closed. They don't have their normal gigs at all. So that's one sector that's really gotten hit hard for this pandemic. So that, like, they're just doing an advanced course, which means they've got this plan out. It's up on the website where they're just like, okay, know all this stuff coming in. You're going to get an hour with Lynn every day on those materials. You're going to get an hour with Hans Sturm and an hour with John Clayton. You know, how crazy is that? And so then I just proposed to them just last week. So we're still flying by the seat of our pants here. But I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we just had, because we can't have a final concert because we're all not together. And obviously the workshops are always cool to end with that final concert. You know, that's what the kids want. And that's what I want. I mean, I want to stand on stage and play with John Clayton, don't you?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Like, or whatever. And so I was like, hey, can we, what if we did one of those big, everybody sends in a video and we play along to the tracks and you guys record the bed tracks, so they're jamming along with you. And so they were like, yeah. And so we're doing a whole version of Summertime, which is just great. Such a great classic song. And it's got a part that's easy enough for a beginner to play. You know, I mean, it's almost all open strings. And they get to jam along with these great things. And like, could you imagine, you know, 200-300 bass player orchestra virtually, and you get to jam with them. And they even left, I said, leave a spot for, you know, we'll throw it out there for all the kids to see whose solo gets picked the best to be in the video, but they get to actually, you know, so you got Lynn Seaton doing the first chorus and Hans doing the next chorus, and then John Clayton doing the chorus, and then your chorus gets to come in. And, you know, like you
awesome.
You're going to be on a video with the legends. You know, like I want to put my solo in.
Yeah, no kidding.
Pick me, man. You know, like that's so exciting. You know, and as I said, I wouldn't have time to do that if we had a normal workshop. You know,
Right.
We're forced to think of creative ways to do that. Now my video person was like, I don't know if you know what that entails as far as editing goes. But so far, I think they're still on board. We're seeing how they can do it, and they're very creative. So I know it's going to be so awesome to post this video at the end of everybody just jamming.
That's cool.
Which is, you know, that's a song the electric bass players can play, and the upright, the classical people, because there's a nice the melody's bowed, and we know that song is really an opera. You know, like it's such a great song because, you know, I mean it's one of the great classical composers of all time, George Gershwin. So what a crossover! I mean, all that stuff just kind of. Sometimes I'm more lucky than I am. I was like, what about that one? And then I just got sent the mix track. I'm gonna send it to you after this thing so you can hear it. You could probably use it in the beginning or something. It sounds really cool.
Oh, please send it along. Yeah, that'd be great.
You know, just those three, man. Their sense of swing, man. That's like, oh, man, like the swing rhythm. You can't write that down, man. You have to learn it by by playing it with people. And so what a learning tool that will be, you know, for generations, I hope, you know. So
that is cool. Man,
yeah.
This thing has a life of its own. You
just keep going, you know. And you know, obviously I think so the other person that's coming for the first time is Paul Ellison, and I don't know if you know him as much, but I didn't really know Paul until, you know, a couple years after working with Francois more, and then finally, you know, like Ted Botzer was like, yeah, you should talk to Paul. He's really good to ask advice about things. And of course, that was, you know, 20 years ago at this point. So like, he's the guy I talk to all the time about what pedagogical ideas that I need to move forward and what are good steps.
Yep.
Because he is deep, man. He is so deep. So he's helping me arrange like an orchestra excerpt thing for guys, because Ted and Jory from the LA Philharmonic are coming, and Andrew Rossetti from Milwaukee, and he teaches at Northwestern. Just like real, orchestra players that are really, really deep. They're all just gonna work on this list, advanced list for those guys. I mean, obviously this is more for college kids or people out on the audition circuit. They could just come and do that for a week with those guys. Whew. That's going to be kind of fun for them. They can go in a virtual classroom on their own, and that'll be really cool.
Yeah. Wow.
So, and there's an advanced course for the Rabbath stuff that's always been. So you get to really hang out with Etienne LaFrance and Francois, and Paul's going to help oversee some of that, and Ted Botsford's going to teach that too, which is really, man, all of these courses. The hardest part about all of this is I can't take the courses. I want to do that, but of course, I'll be where I want to be, which is teaching the littlest kids. We gotta keep them having fun.
Yeah.
All the time, and I know you've seen me with the little kids and know what I do. Nobody's gonna leave any of my bass stuff with a frown. They're gonna leave. I say this to anyone, because most parents are like, you want my kid to come and play bass that much? And I'm like, they said, they're not ready for that. They're only 6, And I'm like, yeah, they're 6. Good point. My logical brain says that. And I say, yeah, but you still would take them to Disneyland or Disney World. They're not ready to walk around to Disney World for 24 hours. But why does all of a sudden that's okay? It's because they're so excited about it. They don't want to leave. We all didn't want to leave when we went to Disneyland, right? We were there at the end of the night like, and then we fall asleep, we keep moving till we fall over. And that's exactly what I want my bass camps to be like. Just fun. Just, fun with the bass, having fun. And of course, I think we do a good job of that. And Hans always tells me that I'm very kid friendly.
Yeah,
I think about them first.
Well, it's great. I think the spirit of what you've done in person for so many years, it's obviously it's going to be in this, and the people that you bring to it. And I mean, man, like that alone, that Paul Ellison, Jory Herman, Ted Botsford. I mean, and there's of course all Paul and everybody that have that connection to the pedagogy of Rabbath too. So even at the highest level of orchestral playing, you have that sort of through line, which is really great.
Yeah, and also just because we're talking about that, what's nice about the event is that it's for all basses, and I've worked really hard at making sure that, as I said, the electric bass players feel welcome. The jazz players feel welcome. They're not going to just be force-fed something that they don't want to do. It's a lot like ISB. There'll be a menu, and if they like that, and they fill out their enrollment form, and I'll set it up to where they want to be. So I have a lot of kids that are just they're very creative. They write all their own music. They're teenagers that are forming their own rock bands or whatever band that they want, and they're making demos, and so there's a whole producer composition course, where you can actually talk to people who are, I found so many times that a lot of bass players are the ones that actually create the music. So, to me, one of my heroes is John Paul Jones. He wrote Stairway to Heaven, man. Nobody even knows that the bass player wrote that song. Come on. All these great bass players who basically, John Paul Jones didn't do anything after Led Zeppelin except for record all the great records. He became a producer. So he's from Lenny Kravitz to everyone else, he's put out more number one hit records after Led Zeppelin than when he was in Led Zeppelin.
That's crazy.
So that mindset to me is very cool. So there's a whole track for that of just like these guys could come and bring their demos and their compositions, whether it's classical. With Frank Proto's coming this year, and he offered to, like, I'll talk to anyone about composition if they want. What? I want to do that.
Yeah.
Like, Frank's so incredibly hip, like, I've talked to him about my own compositions myself, but, like, for him to just work with you for a couple hours a day, wow. Like, that's the kind of giving that I'm getting when I just ask people what they want to do, and it's, to me, then I'm just going nuts myself, just how exciting that is for people, and so the other thing that I have is like all the Kansas City musicians. So you mentioned that, like when I first started, it was basically, it's the camp for your students, and fair enough, like I needed a camp for my students to go to, like,
right.
And so they were the primary reason that I started it. But, I was like, I'm not competing with any other bass teacher in Kansas City or, like none of that. Just check that at the door, like I'm not competing with any other style of music, any other pedagogy, like I just want people to play the bass, and that as well too. So I really worked hard at building that barrier between grabbing the Kansas City jazz musicians and the Kansas City rock musicians and the Kansas City classical musicians. So I'm really excited. I actually haven't even put this on the website yet, but the whole Kansas City Bass Symphony section's coming, which is totally awesome because usually they would stop by for an hour or something, because they're gigging, like in the summer their world doesn't start. They're playing all the time. So just like Ted and Jory, they're loving the fact that they can go do something productive because we're all kind of, so it's helping the people that are donating time, and it's a really rare opportunity to put all these people together for them to show really what Kansas City's. I'm going to highlight and show people how great Kansas City is as a town, because it's a marvelous musical town.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
It's a great town. I love Kansas City. I've only been to Kansas City maybe four times or something like that. But like from a great orchestra, or maybe 5, because I definitely auditioned for that orchestra at least one or 2 times. Oh yeah.
I didn't know. We could have had barbecue before you sent it.
I know. We're going back to the.
That's why you didn't get the gig, because you didn't go out to barbecue with me before the audition.
That's might have cinched it, man. It was good, but like that I remember watching that new hall going up several years ago at the ASTA convention, and then what a phenomenal bass section. That whole crew, Jeff Cale and I go way back.
You do? Well, I just talked to them about that, and I said, we just had, our Royals finally won the World Series 5 years ago.
Yep.
For the first time. They were actually good. Now they're back to being not so good. And then, of course, last year, in the first time in my whole life that our Chiefs win, and of course, everybody's talking about Patrick Mahomes as the best quarterback to watch, and he is. He's amazing, and he's such a great person. He's fun to watch. And I said this to Jeff. I said, man, what people should also know is our bass section's the best it's been since I've been watching the symphony all my life. I've been going since Bruce Bransby used to be our first chair. I remember hearing him play, and I remember hearing the bass section. And now the bass section's better than it's ever been. And I said I can't really tell you because the hall is so much better to go here. The hall has changed a lot, but when a bass section's that good, it's just, it makes the orchestra so incredible. Usually when you get into the mid-market orchestra, sometimes the bass section is the one that doesn't get the.
Oh,
they don't. It's not together.
No, it's an incredible lineup. I mean, the players in that section are phenomenal. They also happen to have one of the best Instagram accounts out there. And Jeff, I've actually never had Jeff on the podcast, although in a sense I did, because he passed along some tracks. One of them was called Big Green Horn, and then one was like a death metal tune or something like that. But that would be a good Easter egg for the if he wanted to put it out. Jeff's got some pretty entertaining late 90s, early 2000s tracks.
Well, one of the things that I said to them, like for years, the symphonies really. The KC Symphony's really at the highest level it's ever been as a symphony. Again, the hall has changed things for them, but it's also a destination because, the mid-market thing, just like our Royals. I have a joke about the Royals. I'm like, yeah, we go to the World Series every year, one player at a time, because when a player gets good, then the Yankees come by and give them more money and steal them.
I mean,
but Kansas City, it's really nice because when Jeff first took the chair, I was like, okay, he's got 4 years before he goes on to. But talking to Jeff, he's like, nah, I'm not going anywhere. I love it here. This is where I'm at. This is my place. This is my stopping point. So, and that's you talk to all of them, and it's just like. You could tell that they love being in that orchestra. It's not just a job to them, and it's not just a stepping stone to them. It means something to them. I think that's really what you hear when you go see them play, and that's really cool to watch, especially in a professional organization.
Oh yeah.
You can just start punching the clock. So it's exciting how passionate they all are.
Well, it's a cool town in general. It's one of those things I've said this before to people about Kansas City, but if you didn't know anything about the United States and you looked at a map and you're like, the edge of Kansas and Missouri, I don't know about that, but it's like you get there, it's this incredible history, this rich architecturally interesting, really geographically interesting where it is, and I've had a blast. I'd have moved there in a heartbeat if I'd have gotten the job any of those times. So
we'll work on your eating, your audition eating habits.
Okay, there we go. Well, man, I will link up to the site. I'll obviously say it before I put this up, but remind me what are the dates exactly on this?
July 7th through 11th.
Cool.
And the hours are basically 9 to about 4, and then I'm still working on. We'll probably have a live streaming concert series in the evening. I'm kind of putting that together, seeing what people. Some people are okay with playing, live, stream stuff, and others it's going to be harder. So I'm not for sure who's going to play on that. I'm going to work on that this week. Every week I'm doing one more thing.
I can only imagine. Yeah, you're no stranger to organizing things like this, but you're definitely a busy guy. I will be sure, and we have so many people that are doing the bass summit that are going to be at your event. I'll make sure to spread the word far and wide, not only on the podcast, but if you want more of this, but in a different way, definitely. And it's so cool that you've made it open to all donation kind of model. I think that's a great way to do it, especially given these times. So
yeah,
it's really great.
I mean, it's just one of those things that like I said, everything kind of fell into the lap once Francois said that, and I immediately said, yeah, I don't, there's parts of me that think this feels a lot like the first year I did the workshop, which you're just like, how do I get the keys to that door open? How do where do I go to get t-shirts? I don't know. There's so many things about it that are hard, and I'm sure we probably could just talk about that for hours, but I definitely want to do the same, and as far as promoting everything, because I'm when I first said, okay, we'll do this virtual, I didn't know all the other camps were going to go virtual too. And I really like that those are happening, because one of the things that we need to think about is that these camps need to be there next year and the year after that and the year after that. And if we all help each other like that, it's so positive, because the more people that can hear the message that the bass is the coolest family on the planet, coolest instrument family, in times of struggle, what do? We all rely on our family, and that's exactly what's happening. And so, we can build something. We could take this summer, and I said that to Vic about his Wooten camps. I'm so glad that they're going on, because they're really unique and important. I haven't heard, is Golden Gate going to do something or?
We're going to try to do something. I think the tech is just fearsome enough to people, or new enough, that it scared a lot of people off. I was actually expecting more camps to try to go on. I was actually surprised that more, and I think it's just like, how the heck do I do that? It's just a new set of challenges. So we're going to try to do something, but you're right, because we want to be, we want something to be there to continue not break the chain. Keep it going.
That's right. I mean, it's very important, because I was supported, helped start so many other bass camps, and when I first started doing that, the other people at the camps were like, "You're just taking people away from your camp. Why wouldn't they do this?" I'm like, wait a minute. There's bass players in every major city, man. We all need to be together. We all need these camps. We all need them in our own cities. Parents can't go to city to city to city to city every year. You need that when you teach the age group I do. The parents, if they have if they have more than one kid, they're not going to drive across the country every summer to go to the same camp. It's just too much, and it becomes, it's their vacation. So I loved when we were in LA last year. Was it last year?
Yep.
And the one girl came to Kansas City the year before, and she looked at me and she was like, "Oh, I'm in LA this time," and she was looking at me a little sheepishly. I was like, "Yes, isn't it nice? Because I bet your mom likes coming to a different place this year."
Yeah.
So then maybe next year she'll come to San Francisco, and the parents get a better vacation out of the. That's a good.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then also, just like, and I remember talking with you maybe like 4 years ago on the podcast about this or something like that, and it was the first time I'd ever really thought about how it really there really is an abundance. There's not the scarcity. People think there's the scarcity, but no, what you're really doing is developing the local scene, and it's so cool to give the Kansas City Symphony bass players a chance to do something like that here in San Francisco. The symphony players, the opera players. Similar, all the LA Phil players that have, the few years that Salito has had her camp going. And I mean, it's a cool thing. And you are such a great ambassador for the bass, whether it's on Queer Eye or with the camp or local news or.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because I say this, I've been in the music industry all my life. So I remember, making my first record, and then somebody like, "I'll give you money for that," and I was like, "No, it's got a wrong note on it or something." When it was my own stuff, I wasn't able to talk as freely as I do here. And I found that when I first started asking for help for the workshop, I wasn't asking for me. I was thinking of my little student who's the most adorable person on the,
Yeah.
So I start asking for that, and it becomes easy to do, and it's like I mentioned that to Salito, and she's getting so much better at just asking people for help, because you can't do it all yourself, as you know.
Yeah.
You can try, but you're only going to do it for 2, 3, 4 years, and then you'll give up. We need you to function as a human being and not just,
Yeah. For sure.
We're all in this together, and I love helping anyone and everyone. And as long as somebody starts playing bass somewhere, I prefer them to start at age 3 myself, at 3 and up. But I don't, if there's 80, it doesn't matter. The bass is still the coolest instrument on the planet. You know that, I know that. And all of these things are just helping us do that. We're the bass revolution, man. We're living in it. You know it. We know it. Our instrument just keeps. Last year at ISB, man, those kids, the professionals were great. But did you listen to the kids?
Yeah.
Like they were the most mind-blowing thing of the whole thing. And I'm sorry to say, but that I left there just like, I can't wait for another 10 years to see what they're gonna do. Now we get to see Xavier Foley do his thing. I mean, I taught him in the young bassist section, and Sean Conley and Ted and Nina, and the list just goes on. It's so cool to watch that.
Isn't that crazy? Xavier Foley was one of the last bass players I saw live. He was out here. We had to cancel the concert, but we did the concert just for the camera. This was like March 4th or something like that. Something crazy. But yeah, like I was just sitting there with my jaw on the floor. Why? And I mean, the level, and I remember actually when we talked for the podcast several years ago, you were mentioning like the Bach first suite is going to be a middle school piece. And you know what? You're right. And that's so crazy to think about a piece that I played on my senior college recital. Not so great, I'm not that old. It's not that long ago, but it's just incredible. One of the things that happened on the quarantine that was Nina did all 6 suites in one movement per day. So whatever it was, 36 days. I was so glued to her Facebook every day. I wanted to see what she was going to do to the next movement. It was like, Tiger King was okay, but I preferred I preferred Nina's Facebook page to see what she's gonna play. And I thought, I was commenting on her every day, and I would call her, and she said she might play something for us at the thing, and I remember her playing the prelude to the first suite to win the under 14 competition on a half-size bass. Yeah. And Donovan Stoke just threw up his hands after she was done. Like, wow. Yeah, so inspiring.
And the same with Xavier. I remember hearing him for the first time, and I went and his dad was standing in the hallway, and I was like, man, you're his father? I always thank the bass parents because that's what I do. I know what the bass parents have to do. And he was like, oh yeah, he just loves it. And I was like, so you're not a musician? No, he's like, he was meant to do that.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And he's like from Atlanta, and it was just like so cool to talk to Xavier's father at that moment. And that was at ISB and was it Penn State, I think, up in Pennsylvania or whatever. Yeah. Is that Penn State? I can't remember.
That's right. That was it.
It was so cool, man.
Wow.
So we have a beautiful family, but before we finish, this just came in the mail today from Madeline, my little turtle. I don't know if you know that I have a turtle that walks around the studio. The kids love it. It's a little box turtle. And so Madeline also loves turtles too. Do you know that?
I did not know that.
And so she sent me this little card with a cool turtle on it.
I love it. And
this cool thing, and the kids are gonna love this, because the thing about the turtle is, if you know anything about turtles, they basically kind of sleep for half the year. Yeah. And so at some point, the turtle will find a corner in the studio and fall asleep for the winter. And of course, all the kids are. I always say the turtle will come out when they play really well. And so I made a mistake of framing that. And so the kids, like, where's the turtle? And I'm like, oh, it's time for hibernation. Like he's not feeling well today or something. Like he'd just go. And so some of them would be like, "Is the turtle dead? Is the turtle dead?" I'm like, "No, it's just." I mean, I didn't know if it was really
right,
dead,
right.
but I'm like, it's somewhere in here. And so anyway.
Oh, I love
thank
it,
you, Madeline.
That is hilarious. Wow.
Yeah.
What a good studio pat. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be. It's good to see you in any form, but more fun in person, of course. And so that'll happen hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So next year you'll be in Kansas City, and I'll fatten you up a little bit with some good barbecue.
I look forward to it. That sounds amazing. That does sound amazing. And this is future Jason back here. But we can't do the barbecue thing right now because we're all locked up, or I certainly am, and you likely are as well. So until that moment comes, I hope you join Johnny, me, all these other people that are involved in Bassists for Bassists and KC Bass Workshop. I think kcbassworkshop.com will take you there and will get you all the information. And wow, look at all these names. I mean, everybody, Johnny said him. Look at Lynn Seaton, Billy Sheehan, Jory Herb, Sean Kindly, Marcus Machado. Oh, my goodness. So many good folks. And hope to see you there. Thank you for listening. Thank you to everybody else who put this together. And we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.